The confidence walk. The way a person walks is one of the most visible and immediate expressions of their inner state. A confident walk doesn't just reflect self-assurance, it projects it. It sends a signal to everyone around that the person is grounded, purposeful, and in control of themselves and their environment. The confidence walk is not about arrogance or drawing attention, but about moving through the world with quiet authority and presence. A confident walk begins with posture. The spine is straight but relaxed, shoulders are back without being rigid, and the head is held up, eyes forward. This upright alignment creates a natural sense of lift and openness, making the person appear more energized and alert. They are not weighed down by uncertainty or distracted by internal tension, their body moves as one cohesive unit, balanced and steady. Pacing plays an essential role. A confident walk has a measured rhythm, not rushed, not sluggish, but deliberate. Each step is placed with intention, suggesting that the person knows where they're going and has no need to hurry to prove it. Even in crowded or high-pressure environments, a confident walker seems unshaken, moving as if time and space bend slightly to their rhythm. Arm movement complements the stride. The arms swing naturally at the sides, with a loose but coordinated motion. Clenched fists, excessive stiffness, or overly exaggerated arm swings can disrupt the signal. In a confident walk, the entire body moves in harmony, exuding effortlessness. There's no hiding, no hunching, fidgeting, or shrinking into oneself. The person takes up space comfortably, as if to say, I belong here. Psychologically, walking with confidence can create a feedback loop. Just as confident thoughts lead to confident movement, the act of walking confidently can reinforce a stronger self-image. It activates parts of the brain associated with positive emotion and control. This is why many athletes, performers, or leaders walk into their state of readiness, using movement to summon the mindset they need. The confidence walk also influences how others respond. People who walk with poise are often perceived as more competent, charismatic, and trustworthy. In social or professional settings, first impressions form quickly, and posture in motion speaks louder than any introduction. In the end, the confidence walk is not about performance, it's about alignment. When your body, breath, and focus move together with purpose, you're not just walking, you're owning your presence. And that presence is often felt before a word is even spoken. The power of an open stance. Body language often speaks more loudly than words, and few gestures convey as much unspoken confidence, presence, and trustworthiness as an open stance. When a person stands with their feet shoulder-width apart, shoulders relaxed, arms uncrossed, and their torso facing others directly, they project a sense of calm authority and genuine engagement. This is what's known as an open stance, a posture that physically mirrors psychological openness. At its core, an open stance signals that someone is not guarded. There are no physical barriers like crossed arms or turned bodies to suggest defensiveness or discomfort. Instead, the openness of the body suggests emotional availability, honesty, and confidence in one's surroundings. It tells others, I have nothing to hide. This is especially powerful in interpersonal settings like job interviews, negotiations, networking events, or even casual conversations. People instinctively trust and feel safer around those who appear open and grounded. From a psychological perspective, an open stance also affects the person holding it. Adopting this posture can increase internal feelings of self-assurance and reduce stress, mirroring the power pose effect popularized in social psychology. When the body takes up space in a balanced and welcoming way, the mind tends to follow suit, reinforcing feelings of control and clarity. In contrast, a closed or withdrawn posture, arms crossed, feet tightly together, or body angled away, can inadvertently send signals of discomfort, insecurity, or even hostility. It may make others feel uneasy or create a subtle sense of distance in a conversation. Thus, the power of an open stance lies in its ability to harmonize both how you feel and how you are perceived. It fosters approachability, enhances communication, and builds instant rapport, all without a single word. Whether you're walking into a room full of strangers or standing to deliver an idea, adopting an open stance is a quiet but potent way to express confidence and authenticity. Shoulder direction as a hidden signal. Among the many silent cues the body gives off during social interaction, the direction in which a person's shoulders are pointed is one of the most quietly revealing, and often overlooked. While we tend to focus on facial expressions or eye contact when interpreting intent, the shoulders can betray someone's true attention, interest, or emotional alignment even when their words or expressions suggest otherwise. Shoulder direction is, in many ways, a person's nonverbal compass, silently indicating where their attention wants to go. When someone is genuinely engaged or interested, their shoulders tend to be squarely aligned with the person or object of their focus. This full-body orientation is a sign of psychological investment. It means the person isn't just listening with their ears, but with their entire posture. The torso and shoulders are pointed toward the source of connection, creating a kind of invisible line of sincerity. It says, "I'm here, and I'm with you." Conversely, when someone's shoulders begin to shift away, angling even slightly away from the person they're speaking to, it can signal emotional withdrawal, disengagement, discomfort, or distraction. The person may still maintain eye contact or nod politely, but their body is subtly preparing to exit the interaction. In group settings, this shift often reveals shifting alliances or priorities. For example, if someone starts orienting their shoulders toward another person in the room while still speaking to you, it may indicate that their interest has moved on. In conflict situations or emotionally charged conversations, shoulder direction can also be a form of silent resistance. A person who turns their upper body slightly away while keeping their feet planted may be expressing guardedness or defensiveness without saying a word. It's a physical barrier, a way of reducing vulnerability by subconsciously shielding oneself. Interestingly, people are often unaware they're doing this. Because shoulder direction is less conscious than facial expression or verbal tone, it tends to be a more honest indicator of where a person truly wants to be, or where they no longer want to stay. Observing shoulder direction can offer a subtle yet powerful layer of insight. In conversation, noticing a gradual turning away may prompt you to re-engage the other person, ask for feedback, or pivot the topic. In group dynamics, it can reveal who is aligned with whom, who is leading attention, or who feels excluded. Ultimately, shoulder direction acts as the body's orientation toward desire, focus, or withdrawal. It's a quiet gesture, easy to miss, but profoundly meaningful. To read it well is to see not just where a person stands, but where their mind, and perhaps even their heart, is leaning. Brief touch to establish connection. A brief, well-timed touch can be one of the most powerful tools for building trust, warmth, and emotional resonance in human interaction. Whether it's a light tap on the arm, a gentle pat on the back, or a quick touch on the shoulder, this small gesture carries a significant psychological weight. It communicates empathy, reassurance, and presence, often more effectively than words. Touch is the first sense we develop as infants, and it remains a fundamental part of how we connect with others throughout life. When used appropriately, a brief touch can trigger the release of oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, which promotes feelings of trust and emotional closeness. This explains why even a fleeting physical connection can deepen rapport or diffuse tension during conversation. The key to this technique lies in subtlety and context. A brief touch during a moment of agreement, shared laughter, or comfort can enhance emotional alignment. It signals attentiveness and sincerity, reinforcing the message, "I'm here with you. I see you." In professional settings, a quick handshake or a congratulatory touch on the arm can project confidence and support without overstepping boundaries. In more personal settings, touch can serve as a gentle bridge between words and feelings. Importantly, the effectiveness of this gesture depends on timing, cultural norms, and the existing level of familiarity between people. An unwanted or mistimed touch can create discomfort or even backfire, so sensitivity to cues, both verbal and nonverbal, is essential. The touch should be brief, respectful, and naturally integrated into the flow of the interaction, not forced or excessive. Those who master this form of nonverbal communication understand that human connection isn't built solely through dialogue, but through subtle affirmations of presence. A brief touch, when authentic, doesn't interrupt the conversation, it deepens it. It reassures, grounds, and momentarily bridges the physical and emotional space between people. In a world often dominated by screens and distance, the power of a gentle touch reminds us that connection is not just something we speak, it's something we feel. Feet reveal true intentions. While most people focus on facial expressions or hand gestures when reading body language, the feet often tell a more honest story. Unlike the face, which we learn to consciously control, the positioning and direction of the feet tend to be unconscious, making them one of the most reliable indicators of true feelings, intentions, and comfort levels. The phrase, "the feet reveal the truth," exists for a reason. In social interactions, where someone's feet are pointing can indicate where their attention or interest truly lies. For example, if you're speaking with someone who appears engaged, smiling, nodding, maintaining eye contact, but their feet are pointed toward the door or angled away from you, there's a good chance their mind is already elsewhere. Their body is subtly preparing for departure, even if their words are polite. On the other hand, when someone's feet are pointed directly at you, it signals genuine interest and psychological alignment. Foot behavior also betrays nervousness or discomfort. Rapid foot tapping, shifting weight from foot to foot, or turning one foot out while keeping the rest of the body still can all suggest unease or impatience. These signals are often involuntary, people may not even realize they're doing them, yet they speak volumes about how they're really feeling. In group settings, foot orientation can reveal social dynamics. If two people in a group are interested in each other, they'll often angle their feet toward one another, even if they're speaking to someone else. This can signal attraction, alliance, or preference. Likewise, someone trying to leave a conversation will often subtly shift their feet first, long before they make any verbal move to exit. The reliability of foot cues comes from how deeply ingrained they are in our evolutionary biology. In threatening or uncomfortable situations, our primitive brain prepares for fight or flight, often beginning with small shifts in stance, feet adjusting to pivot, flee, or brace. These movements still show up in modern interactions, even in non-dangerous contexts like a business meeting or casual chat. Understanding the language of the feet offers a powerful advantage in communication. It allows you to notice when someone is disengaging before they say so, or to identify unspoken interest or discomfort. It also helps in adjusting your own body language. By aligning your feet consciously toward others, you can signal openness, confidence, and attentiveness, even before you speak. Ultimately, while the eyes may be the window to the soul, the feet are the compass of intention. Quiet and often overlooked, they point not just to where someone stands, but where they truly want to go. Eyeglasses removal equals mental pause. The act of removing eyeglasses during a conversation may seem like a minor, almost incidental movement, but it often carries deeper psychological significance. More than a physical adjustment, it frequently serves as a mental pause, a moment of internal recalibration where the individual is processing information, shifting emotional gears, or preparing to make a considered point. When someone takes off their glasses, especially in the midst of dialogue or decision-making, it can signal that their attention is moving inward. It's a transitional gesture, a break from the external flow of the conversation to reorient their thoughts. This may occur in moments of contemplation, disagreement, emotional impact, or cognitive overload. Much like pausing speech or leaning back in a chair, removing eyeglasses is a subtle way of creating space to think. This gesture also functions as a form of nonverbal punctuation. Just as a speaker might pause before delivering an important statement, the removal of glasses can signal that what comes next is meaningful. In some cases, it precedes a shift in tone, from listening to responding, from casual to serious, from uncertain to decisive. The gesture slows down the rhythm of the interaction and invites others to pay closer attention. Eyeglasses themselves are symbolic of focus and observation. They are literal lenses through which one sees the world. Removing them can unconsciously represent a shift in perception, stepping back from a situation, reconsidering one's view, or momentarily withdrawing from a role, e.g., expert, authority figure, listener. It's not uncommon for people to remove their glasses when they feel emotional, challenged, or exhausted, as if breaking the visual link to the external world helps them process what's happening internally. The nature of the movement matters. A slow, deliberate removal paired with a long silence might suggest deep thought or emotional restraint. A quick, irritated motion could signal frustration or disbelief. In contrast, someone who polishes their lenses while thinking is often signaling not just pause, but an effort to clarify, both literally and metaphorically. For observers, recognizing this cue can be valuable. It suggests that the person may be at a turning point in their thinking or emotional state. Rather than rushing to fill the silence or respond immediately, giving them space during this moment often leads to more thoughtful and honest exchanges. In essence, eyeglasses removal is rarely just about comfort or habit. It's a physical manifestation of an inner pause, a moment of detachment, processing, or transition. In the quiet choreography of body language, it signals that something unseen is shifting, and that what follows may carry greater weight. Shoulder shrug equals uncertainty. The shoulder shrug is a universal body language cue that speaks the language of uncertainty, ambiguity, or resignation. It is a small, often automatic movement, raising one or both shoulders toward the ears, typically accompanied by a slight tilt of the head or an upturned palm, that communicates, without words, "I don't know, I'm not sure," or "it's out of my control." In its purest form, it is the body's way of expressing a lack of conviction, clarity, or confidence in what is being said or experienced. What makes the shoulder shrug so revealing is its unconscious nature. People do it even when their words express certainty, making it a reliable signal of incongruity between verbal and nonverbal communication. For example, someone might say, "I'm fine," while giving a slight shrug, which subtly betrays doubt or emotional conflict. The body, in this case, confesses what the mouth conceals. The motion itself is telling. By lifting the shoulders, a person physically minimizes their profile, which is an ancient signal of submission or self-protection. It's as though the body is retreating slightly, creating less presence in the space. The shrug often comes with other cues, raised eyebrows, a fleeting frown, or an exhale, that reinforce the message of uncertainty or helplessness. Context deepens its meaning. A casual, quick shrug in conversation may simply reflect not knowing an answer or being indifferent. But in a professional setting, a hesitant shrug while explaining a decision can undermine authority, signaling doubt or a lack of control. In emotionally charged moments, a slow, slumped shrug might indicate emotional surrender. "I don't know what else to do." There are also partial or one-sided shrugs, which are even more revealing. A single shoulder lift can suggest ambivalence, sarcasm, or insincerity. It often appears when someone is attempting to downplay responsibility or hide true feelings behind a veil of indifference. It's less about not knowing and more about pretending not to care. For skilled communicators, noticing a shrug, especially when it contradicts spoken words, can offer a valuable opportunity. It may signal a need to ask better questions, offer reassurance, or slow down to explore what's really going on beneath the surface. When a shrug accompanies silence, it can be a quiet cry for guidance, clarity, or support. In essence, the shoulder shrug is the body's nonverbal admission of uncertainty, ambivalence, or emotional surrender. It's a fleeting motion, but it carries weight. To see it is to sense doubt. To understand it is to recognize a moment when certainty falters and authenticity tries to surface, if only for a second. The pause and look. The pause and look is a deceptively simple yet psychologically potent body language technique that enhances presence, influence, and communication clarity. At its core, this gesture involves pausing just before or after delivering a key point, and holding eye contact with the other person or audience. It's a moment of deliberate stillness that speaks volumes, even in silence. When used effectively, the pause serves to create anticipation. It gives weight to what's about to be said, signaling that the speaker is thoughtful and intentional. The added element of a steady look, especially direct but non-aggressive eye contact, invites engagement, heightens attention, and subtly commands respect. The brain, wired to notice changes in rhythm and silence, instinctively tunes in when a speaker pauses. Coupled with the look, it creates a tension that draws the listener closer. This technique is frequently used by great orators, leaders, and negotiators. A pause before a statement builds suspense, making the message feel more deliberate and powerful. A pause after a statement allows the message to sink in, giving it emotional and intellectual weight. The look, meanwhile, reinforces the personal nature of the communication. It conveys confidence, presence, and sometimes even challenge, depending on the context. Psychologically, the pause and look communicates self-assurance. It shows that the speaker is comfortable with silence, unafraid of being watched, and confident enough not to rush. In contrast, people who are nervous or uncertain often fill space with unnecessary words, fidgeting, or avoiding eye contact. A pause, especially one accompanied by a calm and intentional gaze, sends the opposite signal: I'm in control. I know this matters. And I know you're listening. There's also an interpersonal dimension. The look isn't about domination, it's about connection. When used with warmth and presence, it can make a listener feel seen and acknowledged. In a one-on-one conversation, it reinforces sincerity and invites honest dialogue. In a group setting, it can make each individual feel personally addressed, even in a crowd. However, like any powerful tool, the pause and look must be used judiciously. Overuse can create discomfort or seem theatrical. But in the right moments, when delivering a key idea, asking a meaningful question, or allowing space for reaction, it can turn a simple interaction into a moment of lasting impact. It's a reminder that sometimes, silence and stillness speak the loudest. The lip purse of resistance. The act of pursing one's lips, pressing them together tightly into a thin line, is a small, easily overlooked facial gesture. Yet in the subtle language of nonverbal communication, it can carry a powerful message. Often referred to as the lip purse, this expression is a classic sign of psychological resistance, emotional restraint, or suppressed disagreement. Though silent, it often speaks louder than words. When someone purses their lips, they are, in effect, holding something back. The gesture may indicate that they are feeling tension or disapproval but are unwilling, or unable, to express it openly. It's as if the person is physically sealing their mouth to prevent what they truly feel from slipping out. This is why the lip purse is so often seen in situations where people are trying to remain polite, composed, or professionally neutral, even as their emotions suggest otherwise. In conversation, a pursed lip expression often appears in reaction to a comment or suggestion the person disagrees with, but does not want to challenge directly. It might last only a second, a quick tightening of the mouth, a subtle narrowing of the lips, but for the trained observer, it is a red flag. It signals internal conflict. I'm not okay with this, but I'm not saying so, yet. This gesture is common in negotiation, leadership, or emotionally charged discussions. For example, a manager giving critical feedback may notice an employee purse their lips while nodding, revealing silent disagreement or emotional resistance. In relationships, it may appear when one partner is frustrated but choosing silence over argument. The lip purse is often the precursor to withheld opinions, unspoken frustrations, or thoughts that have been judged too risky to share in the moment. Context matters greatly. A lip purse accompanied by narrowed eyes or a furrowed brow may point to skepticism or irritation. Paired with a downward gaze and tightened jaw, it could indicate emotional suppression or quiet resentment. Alone, it might be fleeting and subtle, but rarely meaningless. Understanding this gesture allows for deeper insight into what is left unsaid. It's not necessarily a sign of hostility, but it is a cue that something beneath the surface deserves attention. A skillful communicator who notices a lip purse might pause, reframe their message, or gently invite the other person to share their thoughts, creating space for dialogue before tension turns into silence or withdrawal. In essence, the lip purse is the body's way of saying, I have something to say, but I won't, at least not yet. It reveals the invisible wall of resistance, a quiet protest behind a composed exterior. And for those who know how to read it, it offers a chance to bridge the emotional gap before it grows wider. Mirroring for connection. Mirroring is one of the most subtle yet powerful body language techniques for building rapport and deepening connection. It involves unconsciously or deliberately mimicking another person's gestures, posture, facial expressions, tone, or even speech patterns. When done naturally and with genuine intent, mirroring creates a sense of familiarity and alignment that helps two people feel more in sync, psychologically and emotionally. At the heart of mirroring is a simple principle: people tend to like those who are like them. When someone sees their own body language reflected back, it generates a sense of comfort and validation. This is not because they consciously notice the mimicry, but because the interaction feels more fluid and affirming. The brain interprets this subtle similarity as a signal of empathy and shared understanding, fostering a feeling of trust. For example, if a person leans forward while speaking, lightly mirroring that posture, after a short pause, can signal interest and attentiveness. If they use hand gestures while explaining a point, gently adopting a similar rhythm can reinforce mutual engagement. Even matching their speaking pace or energy level can help make the interaction feel more harmonious. Importantly, effective mirroring is not about imitation or manipulation, it's about attunement. It must be subtle, respectful, and adaptive to the flow of the interaction. This technique is often used instinctively in close relationships or friendships, where people naturally begin to mirror each other over time. However, it can also be consciously employed in professional or unfamiliar social settings to accelerate the sense of connection. Salespeople, negotiators, therapists, and public speakers frequently use mirroring to build trust, reduce resistance, and create a collaborative dynamic. When misused or exaggerated, however, mirroring can backfire. If someone senses they're being copied too precisely or too quickly, it can come off as inauthentic or even mocking. The key lies in observation and pacing. Mirroring should always feel organic, not strategic. Ultimately, mirroring works not because it tricks the mind, but because it reflects something deeper, empathy. It's a nonverbal way of saying, I see you, I'm with you, and I'm tuned into what you're expressing. When used sincerely, it turns everyday interactions into meaningful connections. Microexpressions reveal hidden emotions. Microexpressions are brief, involuntary facial expressions that reveal a person's true emotions, often before they have a chance to consciously conceal them. Lasting only a fraction of a second, typically between January 25th th and January 5th th of a second, these fleeting expressions bypass our filters and surface directly from the emotional brain. In a world where people often choose their words carefully and manage their outward demeanor, microexpressions act like emotional leaks, offering a glimpse into what someone is genuinely feeling beneath the surface. These expressions are universal. Regardless of culture, language, or background, humans display the same core emotional microexpressions: happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, surprise, and contempt. They are deeply wired into our biology, rooted in the limbic system, and appear automatically in response to strong emotional stimuli. For example, someone might say they're fine while flashing a momentary flicker of fear or sadness across their face, gone so quickly that most people miss it, yet felt intuitively as something off. The power of microexpressions lies in their honesty. Because they are so quick and uncontrolled, they often betray emotions people would rather hide. In high-stakes situations, such as job interviews, negotiations, therapy, interrogations, or even personal conflicts, microexpressions can reveal contradictions between what's being said and what's truly felt. A flash of contempt during a smile, a split-second grimace during praise, or a flash of fear during a confident claim can radically shift how a message is interpreted. Recognizing microexpressions requires sharp observation and practice. Most people sense them intuitively, feeling a sudden discomfort without knowing why, but trained individuals, such as psychologists, law enforcement professionals, or negotiators, can spot and interpret them more precisely. These microsignals become tools for deeper understanding, not to judge or accuse, but to ask better questions, to probe gently, or to empathize more accurately. It's important to note that detecting a microexpression does not automatically reveal its cause. A flash of anger might stem from the current conversation, or it might be a reflex to an unrelated internal memory or thought. Context matters, and interpretation must be done with care. Still, their presence tells us that something meaningful is happening emotionally, something the person may not be fully expressing with words. In a world where people often say what they think is expected, microexpressions remain a subtle, raw truth. They remind us that beneath the layers of language and control, emotion still pulses honestly through the face. To recognize them is to listen not just with the ears, but with the eyes, and to engage more deeply with what others truly feel, not just what they choose to say. Crossed legs pointed away. When someone sits with their legs crossed and the top leg or knee is pointed away from another person, it can be a subtle but telling sign of discomfort, disinterest, or emotional detachment. This form of body language often reveals more than facial expressions or spoken words because it taps into the body's instinct to physically orient itself toward what it finds engaging, safe, or attractive, and away from what it finds uncomfortable, threatening, or dull. Human beings are naturally inclined to point their bodies, especially their feet and legs, toward what holds their attention or affection. So, when someone crosses their legs but the upper leg or knee angles away from the person they're speaking with, it often means that their body is retreating, even if their words are polite or their facial expression appears neutral. This gesture is especially common in tense or socially awkward situations. If someone feels judged, unwelcome, or bored, their crossed legs may shift to face away from the source of that discomfort. Unlike more overt gestures like turning the torso or leaning back, this posture offers a socially acceptable, passive way to create distance without breaking conversation entirely. In romantic or interpersonal settings, crossed legs pointed away may indicate a lack of interest or emotional unavailability. In professional contexts, it can reflect a subtle barrier, an unconscious method of self-protection, especially when someone feels out of sync with the group or the topic. It's not necessarily a hostile sign, but it does suggest a withdrawal from full engagement. It's also important to note the difference between crossed legs that point toward versus away from someone. When legs are crossed and oriented toward another person, it often signals openness, comfort, or attraction. But when the legs pivot away, even slightly, it typically reflects the opposite, a guarded, disengaged, or cautious mindset. Of course, context matters. Room layout, chair positioning, or physical habits may influence posture. But when this gesture appears alongside other signs of withdrawal, like minimal eye contact, flat tone, or lack of facial expression, it strongly suggests the person is not fully comfortable, connected, or interested in the current interaction. In summary, crossed legs pointed away from someone are a nonverbal cue that often signals discomfort, disinterest, or emotional distance. It reflects a body that's subtly turning away, even when the conversation remains active. Recognizing this gesture can offer valuable insight into how someone truly feels beneath the surface of polite interaction. Adjusting clothes equals desire to impress. When someone begins to adjust their clothing, straightening a collar, smoothing down a sleeve, tugging at a hem, or brushing invisible lint from their shirt, it often reveals more than just a concern for neatness. In the unspoken realm of body language, these small grooming gestures typically signal a desire to make a good impression. They are often unconscious attempts to appear more confident, attractive, competent, or socially aligned in the eyes of others. This behavior is especially telling in moments of heightened self-awareness, before speaking in public, entering a room, meeting someone important, or when in the presence of someone they want to impress, whether romantically, socially, or professionally. In such moments, the person becomes acutely aware of how they are perceived, and adjusting their clothing becomes a physical way to manage that perception. Psychologically, it stems from the instinct to present oneself well to the group. Humans are social creatures hardwired to seek approval and avoid rejection. By refining their appearance, even subtly, people send a message: I care how I'm seen. I want to be accepted, or admired. This is why these gestures often occur without thought. They are driven by internal motivations long before they become deliberate actions. Interestingly, adjusting clothes is rarely about the clothes themselves. Someone might straighten their tie or reposition their jacket even if everything is already in place. The act is less about fixing and more about preparing to be noticed, judged, or evaluated. It's a form of self-presentation that communicates both anticipation and vulnerability. The context in which this gesture appears can offer additional insight. In romantic situations, a person might adjust their clothing more frequently when their interest is piqued, signaling attraction and a wish to look desirable. In job interviews or professional settings, it can indicate the desire to appear polished and competent. In either case, it's not about vanity, it's about signaling readiness to be seen in a favorable light. When reading this cue, timing matters. A quick shirt tug just before speaking or stepping into the spotlight suggests performance anxiety or self-consciousness. Repeated adjustments throughout an interaction may indicate a lingering lack of confidence or heightened desire to impress. Paired with other cues, like upright posture, eye contact, or nervous fidgeting, it paints a clearer emotional picture. Ultimately, adjusting clothes is a gesture of social sensitivity. It reveals someone striving to align their outer image with an inner hope, to belong, to be liked, to make a mark. It's a small motion, but within it lies a universally human impulse, to be seen, and to be seen well. Backward head tilt signals doubt. A backward head tilt, when someone subtly leans their head away from a person or object while maintaining eye contact, often signals doubt, skepticism, or uncertainty. This movement is a nonverbal cue that reflects psychological distancing. The body instinctively leans back when it perceives something as potentially untrustworthy, confusing, or off-putting. In conversation, it's a way of mentally stepping back without physically removing oneself from the interaction. This gesture is typically involuntary and subtle, but it speaks volumes. When someone tilts their head backward, they may also raise their eyebrows, squint slightly, or tighten their lips, further amplifying the impression that they're questioning what's being said or done. It's not outright rejection, but rather a visible moment of pause where the mind seems to say, hold on, something doesn't feel quite right. The backward head tilt often accompanies moments of critical evaluation. For example, if a listener hears a claim that strikes them as exaggerated or implausible, the instinctive response might be to pull the head slightly back as if to create more space between themselves and the idea. This reaction can occur in both personal and professional settings, during sales pitches, political debates, interviews, or even casual storytelling. It's also a protective cue. Leaning the head back exposes less of the throat and core, a subtle, primal form of self-defense. This is why it can also surface during moments of suspicion or wariness, especially when trust has not yet been established in a conversation. Being aware of this signal allows for better communication. If you notice someone tilt their head back while you're speaking, it may be a sign to pause, clarify, or address unspoken concerns. Conversely, if you find yourself doing it, you might ask whether you're feeling unsure or disengaged, and what's triggering that instinct. In essence, the backward head tilt is the body's way of creating cognitive and emotional space. It signals that the person is not fully convinced, and they may be evaluating whether to lean in, or pull away entirely. Brow furrowing when processing. Brow furrowing when processing information is a subtle yet revealing form of body language that often occurs when a person is concentrating, trying to understand something complex, or engaging in critical thinking. This gesture involves the inward and downward movement of the eyebrows, creating vertical lines or tension between them, and is frequently accompanied by narrowed eyes or a slightly pursed mouth. It's one of the clearest facial cues that the mind is hard at work. This movement happens largely unconsciously and is closely tied to cognitive load, the mental effort required to process, evaluate, or solve something. When faced with confusing, unfamiliar, or challenging information, the brain allocates more resources to concentration. This internal mental effort is often mirrored outwardly through facial tension, particularly in the brow area. The furrowed brow functions almost like a visual emblem of mental friction. Interestingly, this expression is not just about confusion, it can also signal skepticism, doubt, or analytical engagement. When someone furrows their brow while listening, it may mean they're not just confused but actively scrutinizing the information, looking for inconsistencies, or attempting to reconcile new input with what they already know. This is common in situations like interviews, negotiations, or debates where careful listening and quick thinking are required. In interpersonal communication, recognizing this signal can be valuable. If you're speaking to someone and notice them furrowing their brow, it might indicate that they're struggling to follow or are questioning what you're saying. This provides an opportunity to clarify or reframe your message. Conversely, if you're the one furrowing your brow during a conversation, be aware that others might interpret it as confusion, disagreement, or even disapproval, whether or not that's your intention. Ultimately, brow furrowing when processing is a microexpression of cognitive effort. It gives a glimpse into the invisible mechanics of thought and decision-making, and like many aspects of body language, it bridges the gap between inner experience and outer expression. Hair touching as a nervous habit. Hair touching as a nervous habit is a common and often unconscious body language signal that typically reflects anxiety, self-soothing, or insecurity. This behavior can take many forms: twirling a strand of hair, running fingers through it, brushing it behind the ear repeatedly, or even lightly tugging at the roots. While it may appear casual or benign, it often reveals an internal emotional state that is less composed than the individual might wish to appear. At its core, hair touching is a form of displacement behavior, a psychological response where a person redirects their nervous energy into a repetitive or soothing physical action. When someone feels stressed, uncomfortable, or unsure, they may lack an appropriate outlet for those emotions. Touching the hair then becomes a subtle and socially acceptable way to manage that internal tension. It provides a small, tactile form of reassurance, a way to ground oneself in the moment without drawing overt attention. This behavior is particularly common in social settings where self-presentation matters, such as interviews, dates, or public speaking situations. In such contexts, the person may feel judged, scrutinized, or exposed, and the instinct to touch the hair may reflect a desire to self-regulate or to mask inner vulnerability. For some, it also serves as a subconscious grooming gesture, an attempt to appear more attractive or in control, especially when accompanied by glancing around nervously or avoiding sustained eye contact. Gender and social conditioning also play a role. Women are more frequently observed engaging in hair-related gestures, in part because longer hair gives more opportunity for such actions and because society tends to tolerate or even expect this kind of fidgeting from them more than from men. However, the underlying emotional signal, nervousness or discomfort, is the same regardless of gender. When interpreting hair-touching behavior, context is crucial. If someone touches their hair occasionally during conversation, it may simply be a habitual movement or a sign of adjusting for comfort. But if the behavior becomes frequent or compulsive, especially when paired with other anxiety signals like lip biting, foot tapping, or darting eyes, it likely indicates deeper nervousness or emotional agitation. In short, hair touching as a nervous habit is not just a random act. It is a subtle window into the person's emotional state, revealing a need for comfort, control, or composure in moments when they feel internally unsettled. Palms up for honesty. The simple gesture of turning one's palms upward is a quietly powerful expression of openness, honesty, and sincerity. Rooted deep in our evolutionary and cultural history, showing the palms has long been associated with peaceful intent and a willingness to be vulnerable. It is a gesture that subtly disarms, invites trust, and signals, "I have nothing to hide." When someone speaks with their palms facing upward, whether resting them on their lap, gesturing gently in conversation, or presenting an idea, it sends a strong nonverbal message: transparency. This open-handed position reveals the soft, unprotected side of the body, signaling that the person is not a threat. It's a subconscious echo of ancient human behavior, when exposing the palms showed one was unarmed and meant no harm. In modern communication, this gesture still carries that same symbolic weight. Speakers who use palms-up gestures are generally perceived as more honest, approachable, and trustworthy. It softens the message, making it feel collaborative rather than confrontational. Politicians, educators, therapists, and effective leaders often use this body language instinctively when they want to gain credibility or create emotional connection. Psychologically, showing the palms can also have an internal effect. Just as body language can reflect inner states, it can also influence them. A person who deliberately opens their posture and displays their palms may begin to feel more open, confident, and grounded. It becomes a loop of trust between the self and others. Conversely, hiding the palms, by placing hands in pockets, crossing arms, or turning them downward, can signal defensiveness, control, or reluctance. While not always negative, some downward gestures suggest authority. They tend to create emotional distance or come across as guarded, especially when openness is expected. Importantly, the palms-up gesture must feel natural and contextually appropriate. Overuse or exaggerated movements can feel performative or manipulative. But when used sincerely, especially in moments that call for vulnerability, reassurance, or invitation, it strengthens the emotional clarity of the message. In essence, turning your palms upward is more than a physical movement, it is a quiet offering. It says, "I'm being real with you." And in a world where words are often doubted, that kind of silent honesty can be powerfully persuasive. Pausing movement to command attention. In a world filled with constant motion and noise, stillness stands out. Pausing your movement, whether during a speech, a conversation, or a presentation, is a powerful and often underestimated body language tool for commanding attention. When used deliberately, stillness doesn't suggest hesitation or uncertainty, it radiates control, confidence, and presence. It creates a moment of focus, pulling attention toward you like a quiet center of gravity. Most people are in constant motion when they speak, gesturing too much, pacing nervously, fidgeting with their hands or shifting their weight. This can unintentionally dilute their message, sending signals of anxiety or distraction. In contrast, when someone suddenly pauses their body, becoming still at the right moment, it creates an immediate contrast that draws the eye and sharpens attention. The silence of the body amplifies the weight of the words. This technique is particularly effective when paired with key points. Imagine a speaker who walks purposefully as they build up to an idea, and then stops completely, shoulders square, eyes steady, hands still, as they deliver the central message. That pause becomes a spotlight. The listener unconsciously registers the shift, and the message lands with greater impact. Pausing movement also signals self-assurance. It shows that the person is comfortable enough to hold space without needing to fill it. They're not scrambling to impress or rushing to be heard. They're in control of their body, their words, and the room. This kind of presence commands respect, not through force, but through restraint. The technique also serves a practical psychological function. It gives the audience a chance to catch up. In communication, especially when emotions or complex ideas are involved, people need a moment to absorb what was said. A pause in movement creates that breath of space. It allows the message to settle, rather than being drowned out by continuous motion or noise. Stillness does not mean stiffness. The body remains relaxed, open, and intentional. It's about knowing when not to move, and using that stillness as punctuation, a form of nonverbal emphasis. Think of it as the visual equivalent of a dramatic pause in speech. It makes people lean in, because something important is happening. In essence, pausing movement to command attention is a gesture of control without aggression, strength without noise. It says, "This moment matters. Watch. Listen." And in that moment of stillness, your presence speaks even before your voice does. Pointing with objects equals aggression. When someone points using an object, like a pen, phone, notebook, or even eyeglasses, it can unconsciously come across as aggressive, dominant, or confrontational. Unlike an open-handed gesture, which signals collaboration and transparency, pointing with an object creates a physical and psychological barrier. It subtly weaponizes the object, turning it into an extension of the person's authority or frustration. This kind of gesture often appears during moments of stress, disagreement, or impatience. For instance, a manager tapping or jabbing a pen toward an employee while emphasizing a point may not realize that the gesture feels like a reprimand rather than constructive input. Even if words are polite, the body language betrays underlying tension. The effect is often amplified by proximity. The closer the object comes to the other person's space, the more it invades their personal boundaries. People on the receiving end may not be consciously aware of why they feel uncomfortable, but they often interpret it as a mild threat or a sign of disrespect. In contrast, keeping your gestures open, relaxed, and object-free creates a more welcoming atmosphere. It signals confidence without intimidation, allowing for more open communication and mutual respect. Understanding the impact of these subtle cues can help you project authority with empathy rather than force. Raised heels show excitement or readiness. Rising up on the balls of the feet or briefly lifting the heels off the ground is a subtle but telling body language signal that often indicates excitement, anticipation, or readiness to act. Though frequently overlooked, this movement is rooted in our most basic physical instincts, those connected to energy buildup and the urge to move. When someone is emotionally charged, whether with enthusiasm, eagerness, or even nervous energy, the body often struggles to remain completely still. This excess energy can leak out through small, involuntary movements, and one of the most natural outlets is the feet. Raising the heels, even slightly, shifts the body's center of gravity forward, which mimics the preparatory motion one makes before walking, running, or springing into action. It's the body's way of saying, "I'm ready," even if the person remains otherwise still. This behavior is commonly seen in children who can hardly contain their excitement. They bounce on their toes when they're thrilled about something. But adults, too, display this cue in more subtle ways. A person waiting for good news might rise onto their toes unconsciously when they sense it's about to arrive. Someone deeply engaged in conversation may lift their heels as they get more animated. In moments of flirtation, anticipation, or performance, this movement can convey lively energy or a desire to move closer or take the next step. Raised heels can also indicate psychological readiness, such as mental preparedness for action or confrontation. A salesperson about to enter a pitch, an athlete waiting for a signal, or a speaker anticipating their turn might all show this subtle shift, as if their body is priming itself for motion. However, context is critical. If heel lifting is repetitive or combined with fidgeting, it may also suggest nervousness or impatience. In contrast, when it's occasional and accompanied by alert posture and engaged expression, it typically signals healthy enthusiasm or focused anticipation. In sum, raised heels reveal the body's struggle to stay grounded when emotions are pulling it forward. Whether driven by joy, curiosity, or readiness, it's a spontaneous sign that someone is not just passively present, but primed for what comes next. Rubbing the neck as a soothing gesture. Rubbing the neck is one of the most telling self-soothing gestures in the language of body movement. Often unconscious, this action typically appears during moments of stress, discomfort, uncertainty, or emotional vulnerability. Whether it's a person massaging the back of their neck with their hand, gently rubbing the side beneath the ear, or briefly touching the nape, the gesture is a nonverbal attempt to ease inner tension, both physical and emotional. The neck is a sensitive and vulnerable part of the body. It houses major nerves, arteries, and muscle groups that react strongly to stress. When someone feels anxious or insecure, the muscles in this area can tighten, sometimes without conscious awareness. Rubbing or stroking the neck becomes a way to physically respond to this tightening, a self-regulatory action meant to calm the nervous system and signal comfort to oneself. Psychologically, this gesture acts much like a security blanket. It's a form of what experts call pacifying behavior, a small, self-directed movement that temporarily soothes internal discomfort. People may rub their necks when they're being questioned, when they feel exposed, when they're uncertain of what to say next, or when they sense that they've made a mistake. It doesn't necessarily mean the person is lying or hiding something, but it does suggest a spike in emotional stress or cognitive strain. The way someone rubs their neck can offer subtle clues. A slow, firm massage at the back of the neck often suggests frustration or internal pressure. A quick stroke under the chin or near the collarbone might signal nervousness or social discomfort. Some may even momentarily grasp the back of the neck, a gesture often linked with feelings of being overwhelmed or emotionally burdened. In conversation, noticing this gesture can be revealing. It may indicate that the other person is uncomfortable with the topic, uncertain about their stance, or feeling defensive despite their words. Rather than confronting it directly, a perceptive communicator might respond with empathy, slowing down, softening their tone, or offering reassurance, thus reducing the internal tension that caused the gesture in the first place. Ultimately, rubbing the neck is not just a meaningless fidget. It's the body's subtle cry for relief, a momentary act of emotional self-care. For those who know how to read it, this small movement reveals more than hesitation or doubt. It unveils the deeper emotional state beneath the surface, offering a quiet invitation to respond with patience, awareness, and compassion. The leg clamp when seated. The leg clamp is a seated body language gesture where a person tightly presses their legs together, either by crossing them tightly at the knees or ankles, or by keeping both feet flat on the ground with the legs rigidly drawn inward. Often subtle and instinctive, this posture is a strong nonverbal cue that reveals psychological states such as tension, self-restraint, defensiveness, or emotional discomfort. Unlike relaxed seating postures, which suggest ease and openness, the leg clamp creates a closed and guarded configuration. It's as though the lower body is bracing itself, physically containing emotion, vulnerability, or a desire to withdraw. The person may not consciously intend to hide something, but their body speaks on their behalf. I'm holding something in. I'm protecting myself. This gesture frequently occurs in stressful or uncertain environments, during job interviews, serious conversations, therapy sessions, or moments of social discomfort. The clamping of the legs acts as a self-protective barrier, akin to crossing one's arms over the chest. The body instinctively reduces its openness, minimizing exposure and signaling a desire to stay guarded. Often, the leg clamp appears alongside other tension cues: clenched hands, a stiff posture, lowered shoulders, or pursed lips, forming a composite picture of emotional restraint. The tighter the clamp, the more psychological pressure the person may be feeling. In some cases, it is a silent effort to maintain composure in the face of internal conflict, fear, or insecurity. Interestingly, the leg clamp can also signify suppressed impulses. In situations where a person feels anger, attraction, embarrassment, or another powerful emotion they don't wish to express, clamping the legs serves as a subconscious grounding mechanism. It's the body's way of saying, stay in control. Don't let it show. The gesture anchors the person physically as they attempt to regulate themselves emotionally. The context, as always, matters greatly. A person may naturally sit this way out of habit, or due to cultural norms around posture. But when the gesture appears suddenly, or in contrast to the rest of the body's language, it usually marks a shift in emotional state. For example, someone who was sitting comfortably might clamp their legs when a sensitive topic arises, indicating discomfort even if their words remain neutral. For those skilled in reading body language, the leg clamp offers a quiet yet telling insight. It reveals that what's being said may not match what's being felt. It's an invitation, not to confront or pressure, but to slow down, offer reassurance, and create a safer space for expression. In essence, the leg clamp is the body's silent attempt to steady itself, to contain, to protect, to manage the unspoken. It's a posture of caution and control, hinting at what lies beneath a composed exterior. And when noticed with care, it becomes a window into the emotional truth behind stillness. Tightened eyes equals discomfort or suspicion. The human face is a rich canvas of emotion, and few areas reveal as much as the eyes. One particularly telling microbehavior is the tightening of the muscles around the eyes. When someone narrows or tightens their eyes, not simply squinting in bright light, but drawing the skin around them inward, it often signals a moment of discomfort, suspicion, or psychological tension. This subtle contraction is the body's instinctive reaction to perceived threat, confusion, or mistrust, and it often occurs before a person consciously registers how they feel. Tightened eyes are most noticeable in the slight furrowing of the brows, a narrowing of the eyelids, and the appearance of tension lines at the corners of the eyes. It's a controlled, guarded expression, a kind of emotional squint that attempts to reduce vulnerability or gather more information before responding. It typically emerges when someone hears something they don't fully believe, trust, or accept, even if they remain verbally polite or composed. From an evolutionary standpoint, this reaction makes sense. In situations of uncertainty or potential danger, animals narrow their eyes to sharpen focus, block out distractions, and more carefully assess their environment. Humans do the same. When we tighten our eyes, we're filtering input, scrutinizing what we're seeing or hearing, and trying to determine whether it's safe or credible. It's a sign that the mind is shifting into an evaluative, and often defensive, mode. Discomfort, too, is closely linked to this gesture. Emotional unease, whether caused by anxiety, guilt, or an awkward topic, often manifests in the eye region. When someone is forced to listen to something they'd rather not hear, or when they feel psychologically cornered, their eyes may tighten reflexively as they brace internally for what's coming. This tension may be accompanied by a pursed mouth, a slight head tilt, or a stillness in posture, all of which reinforce the signal of guardedness. In interpersonal communication, recognizing this cue is vital. If someone's eyes tighten while you speak, it may be a sign that your message has triggered skepticism, discomfort, or hidden disagreement. Rather than ignoring it, a skilled communicator might pause, clarify, or soften their approach. That moment of tension is often a gateway to deeper truth. Something is not sitting right, and the eyes are speaking it before the mouth does. It's important to note that tightened eyes don't always mean hostility. Sometimes they reflect concentration or uncertainty rather than suspicion. The context, facial expression, and body posture all matter in interpretation. But when seen during emotional or sensitive moments, this small tightening is often the first visible sign that someone is internally stepping back, raising their guard, or preparing to question what's in front of them. In essence, tightened eyes are the body's quiet defense mechanism, a blinkless shield behind which the mind gathers caution. They are the visible edge of discomfort or doubt, reminding us that not all resistance is spoken aloud. To notice them is to catch a glimpse of the unspoken struggle for trust and understanding. Barrier creation shows defensiveness. Barrier creation in body language is a powerful, often subconscious signal that reveals a person's sense of defensiveness, discomfort, or desire to protect themselves, either emotionally or physically. This behavior involves placing an object, a body part, or even the entire body between oneself and another person or situation perceived as threatening, intrusive, or emotionally challenging. Barriers can take many forms. Someone might cross their arms tightly across their chest, hold a bag or notebook in front of their torso, place a coffee cup directly between themselves and the other person, or even angle their body away slightly while maintaining conversation. These are not arbitrary movements, they serve a psychological function. At a fundamental level, barriers create a sense of separation and safety. When we feel vulnerable or exposed, we instinctively seek to shield our core, especially the chest and stomach, which are biologically sensitive areas. This defensive mechanism is often seen in tense conversations, job interviews, confrontations, or moments of emotional vulnerability. A person may lean back and cross their arms during criticism, or clasp an object tightly to their chest when discussing a sensitive topic. While the barrier offers the individual a temporary sense of control, it also sends a social signal: I'm not entirely open to this moment. Importantly, barrier creation can be subtle. It's not always dramatic or hostile, it may simply reflect caution, hesitation, or a lack of psychological safety. Even a small gesture, like holding a drink with both hands in front of the body, can act as a soft barrier when someone feels uncertain or overwhelmed. From a social perspective, recognizing barrier behavior in others allows for greater empathy and situational awareness. It may indicate that someone is not ready to fully engage or needs reassurance. Responding with warmth, openness, or physical mirroring, without barriers, can help reduce their defensiveness over time. Likewise, becoming aware of our own barrier habits can reveal when we're closing off or avoiding something, giving us the chance to pause, reflect, and realign our intentions. In essence, barrier creation is the body's way of saying, I need space, or I don't feel safe yet. It's a protective instinct that reflects inner caution, and while it can sometimes be a necessary shield, it often invites deeper questions about trust, openness, and emotional readiness. Breaking eye contact strategically. Eye contact is one of the most powerful nonverbal tools in communication. It conveys confidence, attention, honesty, and emotional connection. But just as important as maintaining eye contact is knowing when and how to break it. Done strategically, breaking eye contact can shift the tone of a conversation, relieve tension, signal a transition, or even strengthen trust. People often assume that constant eye contact is ideal, but in reality, unbroken gaze can feel unnatural or even intimidating. Human connection isn't just about looking, it's about rhythm. Strategic breaks in eye contact introduce that rhythm, allowing both parties to breathe, reflect, and remain comfortable. When timed well, looking away doesn't signal disinterest, it creates space. One powerful use of this technique is during moments of emotional weight or vulnerability. When someone shares something deeply personal or difficult, briefly breaking eye contact, perhaps by looking down or to the side, can show humility and respect. It says, I'm giving you space. I'm not judging. It softens the emotional intensity and can make the other person feel safer in their disclosure. In contrast, breaking eye contact while you are speaking can suggest thoughtfulness. Looking away momentarily while gathering your thoughts or recalling a detail indicates sincerity and cognitive effort, rather than rehearsed speech. Then, returning your gaze reinforces conviction and invites reconnection. This push and pull creates a dynamic flow that keeps the listener engaged. Breaking eye contact can also be a subtle cue of dominance or control in the right context. For instance, in negotiations or interviews, confidently breaking eye contact after making a strong statement, then waiting in silence, can shift the pressure to the other party. It shows that you are secure enough not to seek validation, and can cause others to lean in or fill the silence, often revealing more than they intended. Importantly, the direction and duration of the break matter. Looking down briefly may signal thoughtfulness or modesty, looking to the side might suggest distraction or disengagement, depending on your facial expression. A long, unfocused stare away can appear evasive, while a quick, purposeful glance downward or to the side followed by a return to eye contact feels natural and controlled. Strategic eye contact, then, is not about staring or retreating, it's about modulation. It's about using the absence of gaze just as meaningfully as its presence. Like pauses in speech or silence in music, these breaks create tension, reflection, and emotional depth. Ultimately, breaking eye contact at the right moment doesn't sever connection, it often deepens it. It communicates emotional intelligence, self-possession, and an intuitive understanding of human interaction, knowing when to hold someone's gaze, and when to give them the grace of looking away. Breathing patterns signal mood. Breathing patterns are a deeply revealing yet often overlooked element of body language, offering subtle but powerful insight into a person's emotional state. Because breathing is both automatic and responsive to our internal state, it acts as a mirror of the mind and body. Changes in breath, its pace, depth, rhythm, and sound, can signal mood long before words or deliberate actions do. When someone is calm and relaxed, their breathing tends to be slow, steady, and deep, often centered in the diaphragm. This type of breathing indicates a state of ease, emotional balance, and comfort. You might see this during peaceful moments, casual conversation, or when a person feels completely at home in their surroundings. The body is at rest, and so is the breath. In contrast, shallow or rapid breathing is one of the first and most reliable indicators of stress, anxiety, or agitation. When someone feels threatened, physically or emotionally, the body's fight or flight system kicks in, increasing heart rate and breathing pace to prepare for action. This kind of breathing is usually chest-centered, with shoulders rising slightly with each inhale. It's not just about oxygen intake, it's a signal that the body is bracing for something, even if the person appears outwardly composed. There are other variations, too. Sighing, for instance, can reveal frustration, resignation, or emotional fatigue. A sudden deep breath may signal an attempt to calm oneself or regain control, particularly before a difficult conversation or public speaking. Holding the breath, even briefly, can indicate fear, shock, or extreme concentration. And erratic, uneven breathing might reflect internal conflict or emotional overwhelm. In interpersonal communication, paying attention to someone's breathing can offer a silent readout of their feelings in real time. Are they breathing faster as the conversation gets more personal? Did they sigh after hearing a certain statement? Are their breaths deep and slow, indicating they feel safe with you? These cues often say more than words ever could. Conversely, being aware of your own breathing not only helps you regulate your emotions but also influences how others perceive you. A calm, controlled breath communicates composure and confidence, whereas erratic breathing can betray nervousness or tension. Ultimately, breathing is the most primal, continuous signal of mood we have, one that flows beneath the surface of every conversation, silently shaping how we feel and how we're perceived. It's not just a biological function, it's an emotional language of its own. Leaning in versus leaning back. The subtle act of leaning, either in or back, can dramatically alter the emotional tone and psychological message of an interaction. These small shifts in posture speak volumes about engagement, interest, comfort, and power, often revealing more than the words being spoken. Understanding the difference between leaning in and leaning back allows one to navigate conversations with greater awareness and influence. Leaning in is a gesture of attentiveness and connection. When someone leans slightly forward during a conversation, it signals interest, curiosity, and emotional presence. It's a nonverbal way of saying, "I'm here with you. I'm listening." This movement closes physical and psychological distance, drawing the speaker and listener into a shared space. In intimate or emotionally charged conversations, leaning in can make the other person feel seen and understood. It's also a sign of engagement. A person who leans in is often perceived as warm, supportive, and invested. It creates a sense of immediacy, suggesting that what's happening right now is important and deserves full attention. This is why therapists, empathetic friends, and skilled communicators instinctively lean in when others are expressing something meaningful or vulnerable. On the other hand, leaning back tends to create space. When done calmly and with openness, it can signal confidence, composure, and reflective thought. It says, "I'm comfortable. I'm thinking. I'm in control." This kind of leaning back is often seen in leaders, negotiators, or individuals in positions of authority. It projects ease without disengagement. It's a posture that allows one to observe and absorb before acting or speaking. However, leaning back can also suggest disinterest, detachment, or defensiveness, especially if paired with crossed arms, lack of eye contact, or turned shoulders. In such cases, it becomes a withdrawal gesture, a subtle pulling away from emotional or intellectual involvement. The difference lies in intention and context. Is the person leaning back because they are confident and relaxed, or because they want to avoid or resist engagement? The key is in the balance. Skilled communicators adjust their posture fluidly, leaning in when connection is needed, and leaning back when space or thoughtfulness is appropriate. They read the moment, sense the energy, and match their movement to the message they want to convey. In essence, leaning in and leaning back are not just physical motions, they are emotional cues. One invites closeness, the other offers perspective. Together, they form a silent dance of presence and poise, shaping how we are perceived and how others feel in our presence. Steepling fingers to show authority. One of the most quietly commanding gestures in the repertoire of confident body language is the act of steepling the fingers. This gesture involves bringing the fingertips of both hands together to form a shape similar to a church steeple, while keeping the palms separated. It's a posture that communicates calm self-assurance, intellectual control, and unspoken authority without any trace of aggression or arrogance. What makes steepling so effective is its stillness. Unlike gestures that involve waving hands or dominating space, steepling is refined and composed. It implies that the person has no need to fidget, defend themselves, or over-explain. Instead, it signals that they are in control of their thoughts, their emotions, and the situation at hand. This is why you often see this gesture used by leaders, negotiators, and experts when they are speaking thoughtfully or listening attentively. Psychologically, steepling exudes a quiet confidence. It suggests that the person feels secure enough to express ideas without fear of being challenged. The gesture also directs attention to the hands, which are symbolic in communication. When hands are visible and composed, it enhances perceived credibility. Steepling shows that a person is not only engaged, but also measured and deliberate, someone whose words are worth listening to. Interestingly, steepling is one of the few gestures that doesn't need to be exaggerated to be effective. Whether the hands are held high near the chest in a more expressive context or lower near the waist during a serious conversation, the effect remains the same: composed power. It works especially well in moments where one is explaining something complex, answering difficult questions, or waiting for others to respond. However, like all body language, steepling must match the moment. If used too frequently, or in situations that call for warmth and empathy rather than authority, it can come across as aloof or overly calculated. The gesture is most effective when balanced with open expressions, nods, and engagement cues that show both confidence and connection. In essence, steepling fingers is the body's way of underlining intellectual credibility. It says, without a word, "I know what I'm talking about." Used wisely, it can turn an ordinary speaker into a commanding presence. Touching objects. Touching or fidgeting with objects, whether it's a pen, a phone, a piece of jewelry, clothing, or even a coffee cup, is a subtle but telling form of body language often associated with anxiety, nervous energy, or emotional discomfort. This behavior acts as a nonverbal outlet, a way for the body to self-soothe or release internal tension without drawing overt attention to the underlying feelings. When someone is anxious or uncertain, their nervous system becomes activated, often resulting in physical restlessness. Touching objects serves as a displacement activity, redirecting that nervous energy into small, repetitive motions that offer a momentary sense of control or comfort. These behaviors are rarely conscious. A person might twirl their hair, tap a ring, adjust their glasses, or shuffle papers without realizing that they are expressing internal unease. The type of object and the way it's touched can provide additional context. For instance, nervously clicking a pen or drumming fingers may suggest impatience or agitation, while gently rubbing a piece of fabric or clasping a personal item can imply a need for reassurance. These small actions create a physical anchor, a point of focus, that helps ground the individual in a moment of emotional disruption or mental overload. In social settings, especially during interviews, first meetings, or confrontational discussions, this behavior often appears when someone feels exposed, judged, or uncertain about how they're being perceived. Rather than expressing their discomfort verbally, they communicate it non-verbally by interacting with their surroundings. While these gestures may seem insignificant, they can reveal deep-seated emotions or a lack of inner ease. Importantly, these movements are not always negative. In some cases, they serve a regulatory function, helping the person maintain composure or concentrate under stress. However, excessive or compulsive object touching can distract others or signal a lack of confidence, especially in high-stakes environments where self-assurance is critical. In summary, touching objects during conversation or while under pressure is a common nonverbal expression of anxiety or stress. It serves as a coping mechanism, a way to release tension, regain a sense of control, or shield oneself from emotional discomfort. While often subtle, these gestures provide valuable insight into a person's emotional state, especially when words don't tell the full story.